And anyway, so so we picked that concept and we really focused in on it. Now, is that a theme? It is, but we felt like it was going to be a useful theme. If it had started breaking down, if we had started losing tournament after tournament and not having good results, we would have abandoned it or reshaped it. But we didn't have to. It did very, very well. And this deck is another example of that. And again, Patrick just does such an amazing job with these decks and putting together deck building teams to refine and tweak them. It's quite a nice unfair advantage to have Patrick on your side when it comes to deck building. So, so I'm going to go through some of the fundamentals of this deck. I'm actually going to change the nature of the screen a little bit here so you can see this card window a little bit better, and that'll help you see the cards as I kind of go through them. Now, we certainly have a mana curve, as you'll note here, that begins at 3, which is very interesting. Now, one way of looking at our mana curve, which is the general cost of our cards and so forth, I'm going to move all these over and make a little space here. One way of looking at things is all these come into play tap lands. You can think of them as 1-drops. And you can certainly think of Rupture Spire as a 2-drop. Now, Rupture Spire, go back over to the card window so you can see the cards I'm going over. Hopefully, again, this isn't too disorienting. So Jungle Shrine comes into play tapped. Arcane Sanctum comes into play tapped. Seaside Citadel likewise. Rupture Spire not only comes into play tapped, but it requires additional mana. So you can see that as being our early mana curve is essentially playing those things down. I'm sure of course we tested with the Jade Leech, who we really love in Standard, and just can't get enough of that guy. David Mills is really a big fan of that card right away. But by the way, to Pat's credit, he really saw the potential of Blood Braid Elf right away and started building decks with it, and again got his feedback loop started. Really started getting real world feedback on the moves that he was making. So it wasn't just we don't just have these brilliant ideas and then spit out a deck list and then be done with it. We build a deck, and a deck is really never done once it's been originally conceptually created. There's always tweaks and tunes and things that we learn and understand about it that make us much better with that deck. So the kind of heart of the matter when it comes to this deck is really going to be our Blood Braid Elves. And that's why we have these 12 great and very versatile 3-drops. Okay? Because we're always going to get those guys when we cast our Blood Braid Elf or when we cast our Qatari Revenant. And our Revenant's going to be a bit like having a 5th and 6th Blood Braid Elf. So that's a really important mechanic in the deck. Now, they decided to play some main deck Ijanis, I believe, and I don't know how that worked out if they did end up running main deck Ijanis. I thought that it might be necessary to run main deck Purge. You really get a sense for tournaments, for me personally, when I'm actually at the tournament, when I'm at, the spot of the event where, folks are really thinking about it maybe the night before, people are playing Friday Night Magic, playing through their cards, testing decks. And a lot of times I feel like I can absorb a lot of information about the format and what we're going to see from talking to folks, just kind of walking the floor, getting a sense for things. And, so Johnny Benjamin, whether that's in the main deck or the sideboard, that's a bit of a metagame call. And notice for our mana curve and for the sort of integrity of our mana, and that's so much of what we do in deck construction is really go back and forth between worrying about what we can cast and then how we can cast it. So what are we going to cast? How are we going to do it? What do we want to buy? How are we going to pay for it? And Traumatic Vision is a great card for that. Oftentimes, probably most often it's going to end up being used early game as to fetch up lands, and then mid and late game it can be used as a stopper to stop cruel ultimatums or broodmate dragons or whatever kind of nonsense may jump out at you and bite you in the nose. Okay. So I've been kind of walking through some of the cards of this deck, and again, this is going to be a bit of a control-ish deck. We're going to be drawing some cards, although remember our Esper Charms can be used for discard, and a lot of times that's going to be a more powerful 2-for-1 than just going to the top of our deck. If our opponent's down to 1 card and we can hit them during their upkeep, and a lot of times they'll have a good card in their hand already, kind of steal their turn away from them, a bit like casting a Misbind Click, taking out their lands. Maelstrom Pulse obviously is the choice du jour for blowing things up and getting stuff out of the way, and then these walls of denial, they just stack up on the board, and I see people trying to combat them with Fleshbag Marauders. It doesn't always work because a lot of times you'll have a Qatari Remnant or a Blood Braid Elf around. or maybe we just get too many of them down. Maybe we have so much Cascade. We have the bituminous blast as well. So there's a bunch of different ways for us to keep sticking these walls of denial, and they just keep coming and coming. And God, they're so big. OA, Shroud. Some things can get through them, maybe like a Master of Ethereum or not find Paladin early sometimes can get through. But a lot of times we can stop them or break up those cards, beat them up with our Maelstrom Pulses, or some of our other removal cards are Bituminous Blast. Caldera Hellion, pretty nifty. I wonder if they ended up playing 2 Caldera Hellions in the main deck. Sometimes they're so nifty and sometimes they're just terrible. So it really depends on the environment and what they're playing against. They have the Obelisk of Alara just in case that Thought Hemorrhage comes out. Thought Hemorrhage is the card that can remove threats from the game. If we get hit with a couple of Thought Hemorrhages, then it becomes very difficult for us to kill people. And so we don't want to have that problem. Certainly, there's look at thought hemorrhage. So we want to have kind of a diversity of threats. We've got to win the game. We've essentially got our Bloodbraid Elves, but really, will Bloodbraid Elf win without Cruel Ultimatum or at least your Obelisk? Could be kind of sketchy. I was strongly considering if I thought we were going to see a lot of main deck thought hemorrhage. I was actually sending Patrick last second text messages and messages through Dave Williams and through some other people to let him know that I really thought that maybe even 1 or 2 year-old Miststalkers in the main deck. I really like this guy. He's a lot like the Wall of Denial, where he sort of piles up and then he just starts taking lives. A lot of times, the thing about Wall of Denial and the year-old Miststalker that's interesting is that we'll really get ahead of our opponents sometimes when it comes to creatures, to the point where you'll even have, pardon me, 2 walls out and they'll have nothing because of Cascade and because of Maelstrom Pulse. And if you Cascade up a Maelstrom Pulse, you're going to kill one of their guys. You're not going to have mercy on them because you have a Wall of Denial. So we always want to sort of ruthlessly be taking lives. Now, depending on how the metagame shifts, I thought that potentially we should be playing a couple of Celestial Purgers in the main deck. But then again, I also read a report where Dave Williams lost to one of the top Japanese players because he had a couple of Celestial Purgers in his hand against a green-white beatdown deck. So there's always that. We also have Blightning in our sideboard. Let's see, it's kind of flashing because I've got dope foils. Or at least one dope foil that. We also have Crystallia Pride Mage. That's really to help out with the artifact decks. Lots of artifact decks out there. Really nasty. We have 4 of them. I have a Bant Charm. I don't know if the guys ended up playing a Bant Charm in their sideboard. Personally, I like it because it can. It's just like one more way of getting rid of Anathemancer and these other cards that can really hurt our land, hurt us land wise. Anathemancer. This guy's obviously the bane of our existence, although we play him all the time. We play him in our 5-color control or our 5-color beatdown decks in Type 2 now in the main deck all the time. Guys are beating. Really fun to Bloodbraid into him. Obviously, a lot of times with all these non-basics, we end up getting beat up by him a fair amount, but a lot of times you can play around him, get him removed from the game or whatever. So Bant Charm helps with that a bit. And then I've got a couple year-old Miststalks on the sideboard. I don't know what their final tweaks were. I got an email from Patrick a few hours before the tournament began with one of their more recent lists. He said that he had been talking to Zach, and Zach was really into it, and obviously went very well. So this is very close to the deck list that Patrick sent me. To go through the lands, we've got 3 Arcane Sanctums, 4 Exotic Orchards, 2 Jungle Shrines, 4 Rupture Spires, 3 Seaside Citadels, and then we've got 3 islands, and we've got 2 mountains, 2 mountains, 4 swamps, and a forest and a plains. Obviously, just 1 forest and just 1 plains because of the Cruel Ultimatum. So 1 forest, 1 plain. Okie doke. So that's what the deck looks like. What I'm going to do now is end this video, and I'm going to start another video, and I'll actually play with the deck, and you'll get to see a little bit. It'll be a little tricky because they don't have replays on MTGO, so I'll have to both play and talk while I do it, and it's a control deck, so that's going to be a little bit tricky, but hopefully it'll work out well.